If at least half and up to 2/3 of C-sections in the United States are unnecessary, then how do you know that yours actually was? Did they tell you it was when maybe it wasn't? In some cases, we're obviously never going to know if it truly was or not. But that doesn't change the fact that, according to the World Health Organization, any country that has a C-section rate above 10 to 15% is no longer saving lives or improving outcomes. And the current US C-section rate is right around 32%. So if you take that lower number, 10%, then 2 out of 3 C-sections here are unnecessary. If we take the higher number, 15%, then at least half of them are unnecessary. I don't want you to just take my word for it. I'm going to leave some links in the descriptions to these studies that you can look it up yourself and see that it's not just me making stuff up. I know it's uncomfortable to think about that. Maybe you've been lied to or misled. However, the numbers clearly show us that is actually what has happened to so many. Every time I hear a mom tell me I had to have a C-section, I always am kind of thinking in the back of my mind, but did you really? And that's not at all to shame or blame mothers. Mothers who are willing to have a C-section, which is much riskier than vaginal birth, they have such bravery and courage to take the more difficult route and the riskier road, because the love of a mother, she's going to do anything that she believes is going to keep her baby safe. And that's actually part of the problem, because everyone knows that. And because everyone knows that, it's often used against mothers. She's much more easily manipulated, into a major surgery because of her fierce love for her child. She will do whatever she believes is safest for that baby. So even when it's not, but someone convinced her that it is, she will still do it. And so the question is, what can we do about this? Because the medical system doesn't seem like they are going to be changing their ways anytime soon, in at least not in drastic enough measures that this will change drastically anytime soon. And so we can't just rely on them for change. Studies show even that it takes on average like 17 years, even when the evidence has been there all along, for there to be major policy shifts and changes in care. I believe that it's time that we take the initiative as mothers and we begin to educate ourselves on what makes birth work well. Because if so many of these C-sections are unnecessary, well, first of all, things are probably being used as a reason for C-section that are actually not a reason for C-section. But not only that, but what makes birth work well? What is it that we can do to reduce the amount of C-sections happening? And I really do believe that that does start with education. When we know how we're physiologically designed to give birth and what our body is created for and what it needs to be able to do that well, then we can avoid a lot of situations that could end up in C-section. The very first birth that I attended actually was a mom who was having her second vaginal birth after 3 C-sections. And after her first baby, she was always just told, you're never going to be able to have a baby vaginally. They told her pelvis was too small. And that is a very common reason that C-sections are called for. But by baby number 4, she had educated herself more. She had found a different perspective, and she realized, what? My body is not a lemon. My body knows what to do, and it's created for this, and I can do this. So she went on to have that first VBAC in a hospital with great support. And then the birth I attended for her was her second VBAC at a birth center. And her body was not broken after all. And I just talked to someone like 1 or 2 days ago, and she had really rough first and second births. They were vaginal. But then the doctor told her that, going forward, if she was going to have more kids, that she probably needed to have a C-section because her pelvis was too small. And that immediately doesn't make sense to me because she's already birthed 2 babies vaginally. But I'm just saying that this is often a reason used. And so her third baby ended up being a home birth. And I believe she said her whole labor was like 4.5 hours. And it was so much easier. So what changed? I mean, I don't think her pelvis magically grew. So what changed? So much of it starts with education, knowing how our bodies work, knowing what makes the birth process work well and what works against it as well. And so I want to encourage you to do that. And there's so many great resources out there. One of them being my book, Birth in the Eden Environment. I encourage you to get that one. But I also have a page on my website. I'll leave that link in the description as well, with recommendations of other resources and books and things that you can look to educate yourself. I have an entire research page on my website with links to multiple topics on pregnancy and birth so that you can educate yourself, or at least get a good start in that direction. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.